Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll start here momentarily. We just opened up the webinar so everybody can get loaded in. We look to have a good crowd today, a good attendance, so we're excited about that. So we got a couple minutes before we get started. So if you want to refill your coffee or whatnot, please go ahead and do so. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining the Small Business Bootcamp. We will get started here momentarily. We're really excited about today's session. We got a large number of attendees planned, so hang tight and we'll get started in a minute or two. All righty. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this Small Business Bootcamp workshop that we've got planned. We appreciate everybody coming on with us this Thursday morning, March 31st, wrapping up the month of March. We got a great session planned today. We're excited to have the Department of Revenue with us for this workshop. As we like to do with the boot camps, we're going to first recognize all our community partners. We could not do the boot camp sessions or the workshops without their time, their effort, and their expertise. So those not familiar with the boot camp, the boot camp is a webinar we do every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. And as part of our 2022 content, we're including these workshops about once a month to help provide additional resources and training for business owners, small business owners. The boot camp and workshops are a statewide initiative supported by our community partners. We do record both the webinars and the workshops when the workshops have a virtual component so they can be reviewed at a later date, and we add those to our content library. The content library can be found on our Small Business Bootcamp webpage at the bottom, and you can sort it by different categories, and we'll have the most recent ones listed there as you see on the screen. But it's a great resource. There's over 200 recorded webinars and presentations that you can go back and review at any time at no cost. Real quick, some of the other programs that the Arizona Commerce Authority has is our Small Business Services or Workforce and our Arizona MEP. These are great programs to help support small business owners and their search for growth with their company. Another great program that we have as you look to expand your business or if you're looking to start your business is our Small Business Checklist. It's an online interactive tool that helps entrepreneurs identify the commonly requested licensing, registration, and compliance needs at the local, state, and federal level. So real quick, I want to touch on some business updates. So first, the SBA has extended the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan deferment period. So if you received an economic injury disaster loan, the payments were deferred for a specific amount of time, and that deferment period has been extended to help business owners recover before that payment starts coming due. Just a side note, the EIDL is different from the PPP. The PPP does have a forgiveness option. The EIDL does not. It is a straight loan over the terms, over the period that was part of that loan package. So be mindful of that. Also want to make note, the Maricopa County Small Business Resilience Program is still ongoing. This program has two parts. We're going to post information in the chat as well. But the Maricopa County program has two parts. It has a 1% interest loan program. It also actually has three parts. It has the loan program, 1% interest. It has a grant piece available. And then it has technical assistance and support for your business in that way. The technical assistance is being run by both Prestamos and Local First. The grant is being run through Local First, and the loan is being run through Prestamos CDFI. Again, we're going to post the information and the links for that in the chat. And then there's also the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has the Dream Big Awards. This is an award program for small businesses. It's a competitive program nationwide, but if you want to apply for it, we're going to post the link so you can find out more about it and the applications for that award. And then some new news that came out I saw it today. It may have come out yesterday, but it's the SBA has the Community Advantage Loan Program working for underserved communities. And they've made some updates and changes to that program to help expand it, which is going to be really good for small businesses and underserved communities looking to get small business loans to help start and grow their business. So we will post the SBA press release in the chat as well regarding that program. So with that, I also want to mention we have our Small Business Digital Academy. This is a 6-week program that helps businesses scale their online presence, build digital capacity, understand how to leverage the digital world now for their small business. It is a no-cost program. It is a hybrid structure where we do some live online sessions along with having some self-paced online information. It does require about 4 to 6 hours a week commitment to take the most out of the program. But that application window is currently open. It closes on April 4th, so next Monday. So if this is something, it's kind of a digital 101 type level class. So if this is something you're interested in participating in, the program starts towards the end of April and goes through Memorial Day. Great program. This will be our 7th cohort. We're excited to share this with everybody. So again, we're going to post that link in the chat and you can access that application if it's a program you're interested in. So real quick, some of the upcoming sessions. Of course, today is our workshop with the Department of Revenue. On Tuesday, April 5th, we'll have our Foundations of Marketing. Tuesday, April 12th, Marketing to the Right Customer. And then Tuesday, April 19th, How to Build and Monitor Your Business Credit Score. So we've got some great sessions coming up. We hope you can attend those. And with that, we will jump in and introduce our speaker. Today we have Megan Hawker from the Arizona Department of Revenue. She's the Education and Training Programs Manager. So we are excited to have Megan talk today about transaction privilege tax and how it relates to your business and the business tax piece as we're in tax season. We want to make sure everything's going right. If we're anticipating that many of you will have questions and we'll try to get through all of them if we can. Please post your questions in the Q&A. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a little tab that says Q&A. Post them there so they don't get lost in the chat. We'll use the chat for some additional interaction, but strictly for questions, we ask you please post those in the Q&A. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Megan, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for having me. As Robert said, my name is Megan Hawker. I am the Education and Trainings Program Administrator here at the Department of Revenue. I don't come from a tax background, so like many of you, when I first started with the department, taxes were brand new to me. So I'm here to say nothing to be scared of. Yes, we want you to do it right, but we're also here to help you if you get stuck along the way. So with that, I am going to turn off my camera just to reduce bandwidth to make sure there is no interruption in our presentation today. And we will go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about business tax basics, transaction privilege tax. So yes, this is different than individual income taxes, corporate income taxes, anything like that. We're talking today solely about transaction privilege tax, or Arizona's version of a sales tax. So as we do get started here, I'm going to share with you 6 slides that contain our statutory responsibilities as a state agency. And while the department may aid in the legislative process of developing technically sound and administratively feasible policies, the mandate to do so does come from the legislature and is signed into law by the governor. The department's authority is outlined in Titles 42 and 43 of the Arizona Revised Statutes. So we've got about 4 slides left here. I'm not going to read them to you, but I will click through them so that you have a chance to read them on your own.
Megan, did we lose you?
No, we're just going through our statutory responsibilities here. So got to read through these and then we'll get started. All right, so that brings us here to our agenda and a little bit about what we are going to be covering today. So this is the business tax basics. So everything's going to be kept pretty high level, but we're going to go into a little bit of everything today. So we're going to talk about TPT features, TPT versus use tax, licensing, filing frequency and thresholds, what we mean when we say location-based reporting. We'll talk about tax rates, exemption certificates, deduction codes, added tax versus factor tax, and we'll end with some best practices here. So if any off-topic questions arise, please go ahead and just use the Q&A session of Zoom here, and we'll answer those as we go along. I do see several questions coming in. So real quick, let me go ahead and address some of those. We are still operating in a remote environment, which means most of our workforce is working from home. If you need to reach someone at the department, the best way to contact us is through email. There are several email addresses depending upon what you want to do. So go ahead and check out our website to find the specific email address you need. Okay. So for Windows and Macintosh systems, the most compatible web browsers for our resources are Google Chrome, Firefox, and Internet Explorer. For optimal performance, Google Chrome is recommended. And at this time, users do continue to report unpredictable results when using Safari. To make sure that you're staying informed of the latest news and updates that come from the Department of Revenue, we do recommend subscribing for the Gov delivery system. When you log on to our website, this box should populate. You can go ahead in the middle of that box right here, add your cell phone number or your email address. You can get text or emails, and we'll send you reminders on things like due dates, filing reminders. You can get tax rate updates, all of that good stuff. If for some reason this box does not populate, you can go ahead and scroll on down to the bottom of the page where you can click the subscribe for updates button and it'll get you to the same place. Arizona taxpayers now have another option when seeking information about state taxes, the transaction privilege tax program, or answers to a variety of general knowledge questions. The PopUp application provides customers with answers to general questions, and it is available on both of our websites, aztaxes.gov and azdor.gov. and it is available for inquiries Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Taxpayer privacy is paramount to the Department of Revenue. Therefore, answers to specific taxpayer questions will not be addressed through the website's live chat feature. Customers seeking information on particular private taxpayer matters or confidential account information will be directed to an ADOR service department. So as we go through, this little bookmark here will appear in the top right corner of your screen anytime we're talking about an important web page. And we do recommend that you go on to azdor.gov, bookmark that web page for future reference. All right, so before we get into the meat and bones of our presentations here, I do want to go ahead and answer some of these questions that are in the chat. Is anything being done about the phone services? Yes, we're currently working on that. I do not work for the call center, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to answer any more questions about the call center there. Let's see. Explain return and payment due dates. Yep, we will be getting to there. Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you've ever had any interaction with the Department of Revenue, you will know that we love our acronyms. And some of the acronyms that we do use on a daily basis, we're going to go over just very quickly here. When you hear us talk about ARS, that means that's the Arizona Revised Statute. AAC is the Arizona Administrative Code. BAU is the Business Account Update Form. That's how you make updates to your licensing information. Your EIN is your employer identification number. A JT1 is the Joint Tax Application. That's your licensing application. The MCTC is the Model City Tax Code. SSN, everyone should know, that's your Social Security number. TPP is Tangible Personal Property. TPT is transaction privilege tax. And then we have TPR and TPN, and those are going to be your transaction privilege tax rulings and notices. And wrapping it up is WTH, and that is for withholding. So as we get started here, we're going to go straight on into licensing and how to license appropriately. So a transaction privilege tax license may be obtained by submitting a completed joint tax application or JT1. This application is named this because it's used by both the Department of Revenue and the Department of Economic Security to apply for transaction privilege tax, use tax, and employer withholding and unemployment insurance. For more information on withholding tax, please visit the azdor.gov/taxpayer education page to register for our withholding workshop. Please note that your application cannot be processed if your employer identification number is not included on the application. If you do not have an EIN, no worries. You can obtain one pretty quickly by visiting the irs.gov website. Transaction privilege tax licenses are non-transferable. Therefore, if you are acquiring an existing business, you must obtain a new TPT license to operate that business. An electronic joint tax application may be completed online at aztaxes.gov. And a paper JT1 may be submitted through mail or by Dropbox at any ADOR office. These paper forms are available through the azdor.gov website. There's no difference in the information requested or filing items available to you if you apply by paper or online. You only have time, speed, and efficiency to gain by applying online at aztaxes.gov. Mailing a paper application can increase your timeline up to 14 business days, depending upon volume. Submitting your application online will also enroll you to file and pay online, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So it is recommended to be familiar with aztaxes.gov sooner rather than later. So aztaxes.gov is our online platform where you can apply for a license, you can file and pay your TPT. There are several tutorials available online, and we do say that registration is a 3-step process. So you're going to log on, you're going to complete that new user enrollment and enroll to file and pay online. You're going to set up your e-signature PIN, and then you're going to link your account. There are, again, several tutorials available online to you to help you throughout your way. So after you license your business, you may be required at different points to update your licensing information. That licensing information is updated with what we call a business account update form, or form 10193. It is a pretty long form if you're looking at the paper form. It's about 14 sections. However, you only need to update the sections that you wish to update. So only complete the sections you want to update. For your convenience, some updates are available on aztaxes.gov, such as canceling a license, changing a mailing address, or updating location information. There is a video online at azdor.gov that tells you how to properly complete this form as well. Another very important form that you might encounter in your business owner experience is what we call the power of attorney form. A power of attorney form is very, very important. If you're going to have anyone else handling your tax matters, they have to have a valid power of attorney on file in order for us to disclose your confidential tax information. So if you're going to hire a CPA, if you're going to hire a bookkeeper, if you're going to hire an attorney or an office manager, and for whatever reason, those individuals are helping you with your taxes, they need to speak to the department, we're going to need a power of attorney on file for them. So there's many different forms available. It's called the 285 series. So if you log on to azdor.gov, go ahead and search through the list and find the one that best suits your need. The most all-encompassing form is the General Disclosure Representation Authorization Form, or the 285. And this includes the ability to grant additional powers to the appointee up to and including a full power of attorney. Now, this form cannot be completed online. You do have to print it and fill it out. And then you can submit it to us by one of these three methods: fax, email, or mail. And like I said, we are still operating in a remote environment, so email is always going to be your best bet. So once you fill it out, have it signed, go ahead and email a copy back to poa@azdor.gov. Now, when you do apply for a license and you're granted your license and you can operate your business, these licenses will be valid for 1 calendar year. That is January to December. And that's regardless of when the license was initially opened. So to avoid unnecessary renewal fees and penalties on locations that are no longer active, you want to go ahead and complete that business account update form to clean up your account there. ADOR does strongly encourage taxpayers to enroll to file and pay online via aztaxes.gov for easier renewals and faster processing. Failure to pay your renewal by January 1st may result in penalties. So regardless of when you license your business, it will be due for renewal come the following January. So right now it's the end of March. If I license my business now, come January of next year, I've got to renew it. If I apply and I license my business in October of this year, come January, I still have to renew that license. So they are valid for 1 calendar year. On our website, we do also have this TPT quick reference guide that's going to give you kind of a one-stop shop for resources when you are filing online at aztaxes.gov. Gives you tutorials, job aids, step-by-step guides, frequently asked questions. All of that is available on our website. And then we're going to get into some filing frequency and thresholds for electronic payments, but I'm going to go on back into our question and answer session over here and see what we can answer in regards to licensing. So this presentation is several sections long, so we're going to take the questions section by section, okay? Which licenses are required for renewal? That's going to be your TPT license. Does digitizing help to reduce the cost, e.g. license renewal cost? So going online doesn't reduce the cost aside from having to mail anything, but it is a lot faster. Okay, so if you mail in your license renewals or you drop them off, It could increase your timeline up to 14 business days, depending upon the volume. I was told by the city of Tucson that I didn't need a TPT license for my bookkeeping service. Is that correct? I'm not going to give you a hard yes or no on that because I don't know the nuances of your businesses, but typically professional services are non-taxable. And that's the same with that next question. I've also been told that realtors do not need a TPT license. So typically professional services are non-taxable. So each year I need to renew my transaction privilege tax license with a new JT1. So you won't complete a new JT1, that's the licensing application. You will get this little link that shows up on AZ Taxes that says renew license. You just click on it and it's going to take you through the renewal process. I would like to challenge the department to see if the renewal cost can be reduced. How is the cost determined? So it's important to note that when we're talking about licensing fees, the state only charges a one-time $12 licensing fee when you first open your business. When we're talking about renewal fees, those are city renewal fees. So they're not state renewal fees. So if you have questions about the city renewal fees and you want to challenge those, that needs to be done with your city. Okay. I think that's all that I saw about licensing. Can the renewal of the license be incorporated in TPT returns so we make one payment? Unfortunately, right now it cannot because they go to different things. One goes to cover your taxes and one's a licensing fee. And we'll talk about who's required to obtain a license in just a second. Okay. Awesome. So now that we have our licensing information ready to go, let's go ahead and talk about our filing frequencies and thresholds for electronic filing and paying. So to determine your appropriate filing frequency, you must estimate your annual combined state, county, and municipal tax liability. If you estimate that liability to be $2,000 per year, you may request to file annually. If you fall between $2,000 and $8,000 per year, you may request to file quarterly. And if you fall into the category that's going to have an annual liability of more than $8,000, you will be required to file monthly. Okay. So filing frequencies can be changed by submitting a business account update form. And the effective date of the new filing frequency will depend on when the request was received and the business's current filing frequency. So meaning the effective date of the change is contingent upon when the respective filing frequency's next cycle begins. For example, if a taxpayer is requesting to go from a monthly filing frequency to an annual filing frequency and the request is received in May, that change will not be effective until the following January when that next annual cycle begins. Okay, so this is how frequently you must file those TPT taxes. If you have an annual liability, meaning what you're going to owe in taxes is less than $2,000, you can request to file annually. If what you're going to owe in taxes is between $2,000 and $8,000, you can request to file quarterly. And if it's going to be more than $8,000 for the year, you can request to file, or you will be required to file monthly. Now, in 2021, any taxpayer with an annual liability of $500 or more must file electronically. Okay, so while the first slide we just saw talked about your filing frequency, this is talking about the requirement to file online. So if you're going to have an annual liability of more than $500, you will be required to file online using aztaxes.gov. Okay. So that's why I say it's important to be familiar with AZ Taxes sooner rather than later. All right, so we're going to go into location-based reporting here. Oops, went the wrong way. There we go. So what is a location code? A location code is a unique 3-digit number that is assigned by the department and identifies the physical location of business activity within a jurisdiction. This code enables ADOR to collect taxes generated in a specific region and disperse the revenue to that specified city or district. The code is used only to report activity or the city town level. So this is where your location code is going to be on your TPT license. And some other things to note, if we look up here in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see your 8-digit TPT license number, the start date of that license, when that license was issued, and when that license expires, okay? On the left-hand side, you'll see who the license was issued to, the location code for that business, and then the location information. So again, the unique location code is used to identify the locations where taxable business transactions are taking place. For this reason, businesses must specify the location code for each unique business location when filing their taxes. So for example, I open a shop in downtown Phoenix. Well, say I get a better deal on rent if I move over to Glendale. So I close my shop in Phoenix and I move it to Glendale. My first location in Phoenix would have been signed location code 001, but now I'm going to close that, move to Glendale, and that's going to be assigned location code 002. Okay, so location codes are 3-digit unique numbers that correspond to the physical location where transactions are being made. All right, and businesses with more than one location are required to file online at aztaxes.gov. So now we're going to get into the ins and outs of taxes, and we're going to talk about transaction privilege tax features. So before we do that, let me pop back over here into our chat, our question and answer, and let's see. Why is a tax bond required? Tax bonds are not required for all businesses. Contractors are required to file a paper bond, so that's why they have to file by paper, but tax bonds aren't required across the board. How do we determine what type of license we need? So if you're talking in regards to a transaction privilege tax license, if you're engaged in taxable business activity, that's going to be your generic TPT. If you're doing something like residential rental, that's not taxable at the state level, so you would just need a TPT for cities only. But 9 times out of 10, your business is going to fall into that generic TPT license. When submitted online, what are the next steps and how will I know if approved if I put future date? So when you're applying online, it is faster. That's the first thing. So I do encourage you to file online or to apply online. And when you do that, you'll know it's approved by allowing maybe 24 or 48 hours for processing. You'll log back into your aztaxes.gov account and you'll see your business listed right there. Is there step-by-step instructions to apply for a new TPT? There are. There's job aids available on azdor.gov. I own a design build company, so I only pay taxes on construction projects and income, correct? So Fernando, I can't tell you yes or no because I don't know the nuances of your business, but there is a prime contracting taxable business activity. So without knowing the specifics of your business, I can't answer that fully. I requested to file annually. However, I don't know if that's approved. Where can I specifically go to confirm this? If you have an aztaxes.gov account, you'll be able to see it on there. Where do we find the business account update form? That is on the azdor.gov website. If you click on menu and then you click on forms, you'll be able to see the TPT forms on your left-hand side, and it will be right there for you. I have an event rental and management company, and I had filed for a TPT license. When doing so, I chose to file quarterly. However, I have not generated that much. Would I still need to pay, and if so, how much? So I can't tell you how much you owe because that's going to be dependent upon your gross income. However, if you did request to file quarterly, you want to make sure you're filing a return for every quarter. Even if no taxable business activities have taken place, you'll file what's called a 0 return. That way we know you're still using your license. If you decide you're not making above that $2,000 to $8,000 mark and you want to file annually, you can submit a business account update form to request that, but it wouldn't go into effect until next January. My company AZ based is pre-revenue, no sales expected for 1 to 2 years. Am I required to have a TPT license? If you're making taxable sales, you're required to have a TPT license. Do short-term rentals need a TPT license? And if they are using a third party, do they need a separate one? So that's a very good question. This class is not on short-term rentals, but yes, short-term rentals are required to have a TPT license because at the state level, they are taxed as transient lodging. And at the city town level, they are taxed as hotel motels. And there are specific requirements when using a third-party platform, what we call an online lodging marketplace. So yes, they are required to have a license. Do I need a separate TPT license for a DBA? So no, when you're completing your joint tax application, we do ask for your legal business name. And then a couple of lines later, it does ask for your DBA. What if I decide on a name change and location? How would I go about changing that? So you would complete that business account update form. Anthem, Arizona would fall under what location code for Cottage Acre? So your location code is where your transactions are taking place. So if you're baking out of your home, you're selling out of your home, that's the only location. That would probably be assigned location code 001, but it's going to be dependent upon, how you license your business.
Hey, Megan, I have a follow-up question to that one as well.
Yeah.
What if you have a food truck and you're hitting multiple cities in an area?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. So if you are a mobile business, the way you're going to report is going to be slightly different. So you're going to report based on jurisdiction instead of by location. So your home base, like where you office out of, is going to be assigned location 001, and say that's in Phoenix. But then I take my food truck and I go out to Glendale, okay? So I'm still going to report under 001, that's my home base location, but where it talks about the region code, instead of putting the region code for Phoenix, I'm going to put the region code for Glendale. And then the next weekend, I take my food truck and I go out to Mesa. I'm still going to use the location code 001, but then I'm going to use the region code that identifies Mesa. So make sure you're keeping your different jurisdictions, your sales in the different jurisdictions separate, because we want to make sure we give the tax money back to the correct jurisdiction. That's a great question. And
then also real quick, you may have answered this, but how do you know if you have a taxable business? So if it's the transit, what's, needs a TPT? Yep.
So there are no, unfortunately, it's no like, if you do this, you're taxable. If you don't do this, you're not taxable. We will get into TPT features here, and I'll show you guys a list of taxable business activities, but you really need to know the structure of your business, exactly what you're engaged in, because it could be that one little nuance of your business is causing you to be taxable. So really know the nuances, okay? All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and jump back in here because I want to make sure we have time to get through everything, and then we'll stop again and do some more questions. But I think this section may answer a lot of questions that we have here. So transaction privilege tax features. Arizona's transaction privilege tax is a tax on the privilege of engaging in certain taxable businesses within the state. The liability of the tax is on the seller or the vendor, who may choose to pass that tax on to the purchaser. The tax is levied on the gross proceeds or gross income derived from the business. So here is a list of some very, very common taxable business activities. Of course, you've got your retail, contracting, commercial leasing, could be personal property rentals. So say that person that rents party supplies, tents, chairs, linens, that kind of thing. Amusement, residential rental is taxable in some cities. But for a more complete listing of taxable activities, you want to visit the tax rate table. That tax rate table is available on azdor.gov. Okay, so take a look at that. Now, what's the difference between TPT and use tax, and whose responsibility is it to pay for each? Well, TPT, transaction privilege tax, is imposed upon the income or proceeds derived from engaging in taxable activities within the state. So that's a tax on the vendor, who can then choose to pass that tax on to the purchaser. Use tax is levied directly on the purchaser. And use tax is imposed upon the purchase of tangible personal property that is used, stored, or consumed in Arizona when the sale was not subject to transaction privilege tax. Now, a caveat to this one is with the remote seller and marketplace facilitator laws that were put into effect October of 2019, use tax really has to become less relevant. However, an Arizona purchaser is liable for use tax on those goods purchased from an out-of-state vendor when that vendor did not collect tax. For this case, it is extremely important to review the invoice once your purchase is received. If there is no line that indicates a tax was charged for the order, the business can reach out to the vendor to ask if they're registered with the Arizona Department of Revenue for TPT collections purposes. And if the vendor is, the business doesn't have to remit anything. But if the vendor is not, and the economic or physical nexus rules do not apply, then the business would need to remit use tax on that purchase. Now, there are also two different types of use tax. So the first one, which we just kind of talked about, that's the use tax on the purchase of property from outside of Arizona, brought into Arizona, stored, used, or consumed. The second one is what we call use tax from inventory. So an Arizona purchaser is liable for use tax if they purchase goods using a resale certificate and the goods are subsequently used, stored, or consumed in Arizona contrary to the purpose stated on the certificate. So here's an example of that one. So say I have a beauty salon, and in the front of my beauty salon, I also sell shampoo and conditioner. I have purchased all that shampoo and conditioner with a 5,000 A resale certificate because I intend to sell it to the final customer. Well, one day I'm in the middle of servicing a client and I realize I'm out of shampoo. So I run up front, grab a bottle of shampoo off my retail shelf. I have now used that product that I purchased tax exempt for something other than a sale for resale. So now I owe use tax on that product. Okay. So that's a little bit about use tax there. So now we'll get into some tax rates. So the tax rate is the percentage at which your entity is taxed. Your total tax rate is the combination of your state, county, and city town rates. The rate of tax can be found on the tax rate table available at azdor.gov. And it's very important to note that your rates may vary based on the different business classifications and the location of your business. So some helpful tips when looking at the tax rate table: you want to know what business classification you're reporting. You want to make sure you're using the correct region codes for the region in which you're reporting. You want to note that some business classes have what are called additional rates. And then pay attention to the footnotes as well. Not all cities tax the same business classifications, and they don't all tax the same business classifications at the same rate. And some cities may have a tiered rate structure, so pay attention to those tiered rates. When you log on to azdor.gov and you pull up the tax rate table, there are two of them. The first table is going to display the combined state and county tax rates, and then it's going to give you some information about your accounting credits. That's off to the far right side. And then table 2 is going to contain a list of all of the city and town tax rates and the city town codes. So table 2 will be more detailed because it's giving you all of the taxable business activities within the jurisdiction. It's going to tell you the region code, the business codes, tax rates, and the county that the city falls in. So this is what tax rate table 1 is going to look like. And the way you're going to use this is you have your counties across the top and your taxable business activities down the left-hand side. So let's say I have a retail business in Maricopa County. I'm going to use the taxable activities header, and I'm going to come on down to where I see retail. I can see my business code is 017. Here's retail. I'm going to follow it on over to the Maricopa County line, and where those intersect, that is my tax rate for the state and county. So for Maricopa County, retail sales are taxed at a 6.3%. Okay. Now, remember, we also talked about paying attention to the footnotes. So you'll know there's a footnote when you see these little subscript letters next to your business classification. So if we're looking, we see right here, transient lodging has a little subscript letter B. So if we come on down, right underneath the table is the footnotes. It's saying that unincorporated areas of Pima County add 6%. And you're going to report using region code PH and class code 000. So not all business classifications have a footnote, but you want to look to see if yours does, and if it does, pay attention to it. Okay, so that was tax rate table 1. This is kind of what tax rate table 2 looks like. There are several pages for table 2 because it lists all of the 91 cities and towns in Arizona. So they're listed by alphabetical order, so you can feel free to scroll through and find your city or town, or the Control F feature, Control Find, does work, and you can just type in the name of your city. Okay. So one thing we want to point out here is that at the top of your city, you're going to see this little blue line. That's going to give you the name of your city, your region code, and the county in which your city is in. One thing to point out are these region codes. These region codes are not always intuitive, but they are required when you're filing your transaction privilege tax returns. This is what lets us know where to send your tax money. So if I'm doing business in Gila Bend, I may think that my region code should be GB, right? Makes sense. Gila Bend, GB. Well, if I look, Gila Bend's region code is actually GI. And Gilbert has a region code of GB. So if I file my tax return and I report my region code is GB, my tax money is going to go to Gilbert. Okay, so make sure you're using the appropriate region codes when you do file your taxes. One other thing to point out here is if you look, Gilbert has a much shorter list than Gila Bend does. So remember, not all cities tax all business classifications. So take a look at where you're operating and see what your city or town taxes. Okay. We already went over that. So here is another easier way to find your tax rates. This is the aztaxes.gov tax rate lookup tool. So if you log on to aztaxes.gov, under the resources header, you can click tax rate lookup. And what you're going to do is enter the physical location of your business here. Okay, then you're going to click search. It's going to bring up a drop-down menu that talks about all the different taxable activities that could occur at that location. You're going to select your activity from the list, and it will give you an idea of what you could be taxable of. Let's see if this works here. I'm going to go on out there and show you guys. So this is aztaxes.gov. Under resources, you're going to click the AZ tax rate lookup tool. You're going to type in your address. So for today's purposes, we're just going to type in 1600 West Monroe. That is the address of the Department of Revenue. And we're going to go ahead and click search. And then it's going to bring me to this screen that says business description. So using the drop-down menu, I'm going to select what type of taxable business activity I'm engaged in. All right, so let's say I do retail. It's going to give me a list of suggested business codes and tax rate for a retail business at this location. So I'll see I have retail. There's my Maricopa County retail 6.3%. If I was engaged in marijuana retail sales, there's some information here. If I was a marketplace facilitator or a remote seller, there's some information there. I know none of that pertains to me, so I don't have to use any of those. And then here's my Phoenix business code. So PX, that's my region code for Phoenix. My business code is 017. My retail tax rate is 2.3%. That's for the city. So now to get my total combined tax rate, what I'm going to charge my customers, I'm going to add my state and county with my city. So that gives me an 8.6% tax rate. Okay. Now this is telling you that these rates are effective as of today's date. And then it's going to give you this little caution down here. And this caution is pretty important. It does say that a person engaged in business in Arizona may be subject to tax under more than one business classification. There may be a different tax rate depending upon which business code applies to your business. So for instance, a person operating a hotel may also be engaged in business under the retail classification. So if they sell things in their gift shop, the retail classification, if they have a restaurant, or personal property rental classification, if I rent jet skis out of my hotel. Okay, so that's several different business codes, business classifications under my hotel operation. So I've got to make sure I'm keeping separate books and records for each one of those business activities. Okay, so that's kind of an easy way to find your tax rates or to take a look. So we'll go on back to our presentation here. And we're going to very quickly talk about the model city tax code. So Arizona is unique in that the 91 cities and towns in Arizona have the option to set their own tax rate through the ordinance process. They can also adopt what are called city profiles, which means that they're going to tax certain things in their city or not tax others. So if you're looking for more information on your specific city or town, you want to go ahead and check out the Model City Tax Code. Look at your city profiles and it's going to tell you what's taxable in that city and what is not. The most favorite one that I like to use is the amusement classification. Well, under the amusement classification, some cities and towns choose to tax gym memberships under amusement. Some don't tax gym memberships. So take a look at your city town profile and know what's taxable where you're operating, okay? We're gonna come on now. We're gonna talk very briefly about exemption certificates. An exemption certificate is gonna document and establish a basis for state and city tax deductions or exemptions. It is to be filled out completely by the purchaser and furnished to the vendor at the time of the sale. Incomplete certificates are not considered to be accepted in good faith, and only one category of exemption may be claimed per certificate. The vendor shall retain the certificate for audit purposes. So once as a vendor, if you receive these, you need to hold on to them. Do not send them to the department, okay? So while transaction privilege tax is imposed on the person doing business in Arizona, only the purchaser may execute an exemption certificate. Again, only one type of statutory exemption may be claimed per certificate, and there are different certificates available for different business activities. So the Form 5000 is your general TPT exemption, okay? The Form 5000A is probably the most common. That is your Arizona resale certificate. There is a multi-state tax commission exemption form. So that's if you are engaging in purchasing things from a border state, so Texas, California, you could issue this form to them to purchase items tax exempt. And then there is a license verification tool. I'll show you how to use that in just a second. And then there is a procedure. I absolutely love this procedure. So there's a lot of different exemption forms out there. So if you download this procedure, you read it, it's going to tell you the exact purpose of each certificate. Okay, so if you don't know what type of certificate to use, download the procedure. It's going to give you some really good information. So like contractors use different certificates than a retailer would. So download the procedure, review it, make sure you know. So the 5000A is the most used exemption certificate. So we're going to take a look at that real quick. That is available on the AZDOR.gov website. So if you just go to the home page here, okay, this is our home page. Under the menu option on the right-hand side, go ahead and click on Forms. Off to the left, you'll see TPT forms. So go ahead and click on TPT. And then scroll on down. So you'll see there's your business account update form. There's your joint tax application. We're going to come on down till we see TPT form 5000A Arizona resale certificate. So if I click on it, it's going to take me to a landing page. All of the forms will have some kind of blurb right here on the top that kind of outlines how to use that form or what to use it for. So make sure you're reading that. And then it's going to tell you to download the form. So the forms will download in a fillable PDF. Okay. So it's going to look like this. And again, starting at the top, the little bullet points here, the bold, that's going to give you some key information about this form and its use. So you're going to use this form to purchase tangible personal property for resale in the ordinary course of your business. Wholesalers must have a TPT license or other state sales tax license to purchase tangible personal property for resale. There's going to be some statutory information right here in this little box. And then it does say that incomplete certificates are not considered accepted in good faith. Okay. And then here's how you're going to fill it out. So we've got business A, and then I'm going into business A to make a purchase. Okay. So right here in section A, I'm going to put my business's information. So Megan's business. I'm going to input my 8-digit TPT license number, and then I'm going to input the mailing address of my business. If I have an email address, I could go ahead and list that here. And if I know what vendor I'm going to give this certificate to, I can go ahead and input the business's name. Okay. Now, come on over to section B, box B. This certificate can be valid for one single transaction or for a period of time. Now, I do want to point out here, there's another little blurb that's very important. It says that you can choose to have these certificates on file for up to 48 months. However, the department does not recommend exceeding a 12-month period. That 12-month period is because licenses can expire. Remember, those licenses are only valid for 1 calendar year. So if business A lets me keep this exemption certificate on file for 4 years, and after the end of the first year, I don't renew my license, and business A continues to let me make tax exempt purchases, business A is going to be responsible for all of the back taxes they didn't charge me if they were to get audited. Okay, so we highly recommend not exceeding a 12-month period. Okay, all right, so if we come on down, section C is going to be the precise nature of the purchaser's business. So Megan's business is a traveling craft vendor. Okay, so I go to Quartzsite and I sell things at the gym show. I go to Cardinal Stadium and I sell things when they do their craft fairs. And then I go out to Mesa and I sell things at a farmer's market, whatever the case may be. So I'm saying that I am a traveling craft vendor. So now in section D, I need to describe the property that's being purchased. So as a traveling craft vendor, what are some things that you would expect that person to purchase? So I'm going to purchase fabric, glue, maybe some sequins, glitter, whatever I need to make my crafts, right? So the important thing to note here is that section C and section D should correspond with one another. I'm a traveling craft vendor. What I'm buying must make sense for my business if I'm going to purchase it tax exempt. Okay. Now, say I am a traveling craft vendor and I go into a big box retail store and I say that I'm going to buy an 84-inch flat screen TV, right? So I'm going to give this to that big box retailer. They're going to take a look at it. They're going to see that I am a traveling craft vendor and I'm attempting to purchase an 84-inch flat screen TV tax exempt. Well, that doesn't really make sense for my business, does it? I'm a traveling craft vendor. I go from place to place. Why on earth would I need an 84-inch flat screen TV? So that big box retailer can tell me, you know what, that doesn't really match the nature of your business. We're not going to allow you to make this purchase tax exempt. So section C and section D should match with one another. That's the most important part, okay? If we come on down to section E, you're only going to check one of these boxes if they pertain to the nature of this exemption certificate, okay? Sometimes they don't, so you would leave them just blank. Section F is the certification, okay? So this is telling the person, the vendor that I'm giving this form to, that I am authorized to make this tax exempt purchase on behalf of the business listed in section A. Section F is a certification of a person, so it must be a person's signature. You can't staple a business card, you can't write Megan's business in here on the line. It has to be the signature of the person that is facilitating the transaction, okay? So I've filled this out. I'm going to go to business A. I'm going to give this form to them. They're going to verify it, make sure everything looks good. I can make my purchases tax exempt, because then I'm going to take all of those craft things. I'm going to make a final product, and then I'm going to sell it to my customer, and I will charge my customer tax on those items. Okay. So one important thing to note here is right here, it does require the TPT license number. So now flip side, I'm the business. Somebody is giving me this form. I'm reviewing it. Everything looks good. Now I want to validate their license number. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this license number and I'm going to go on to aztaxes.gov. In this little top section here, there is something that says license verification. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to input that person's license number from that certificate and I'm going to click submit. If it is not a valid license, it's going to return a red verification status. And it's telling me that the license number that was entered is not a valid Arizona TPT license number. And it's going to give me a time and date stamp. So I searched this license number on March 31st at 10 a.m. And then it says, if you believe this information to be incorrect, the license owner can contact us. So I'm doing my due diligence as a business owner. I've verified the license. It's not valid. I'm not going to let that person make a tax exempt purchase in my store. Okay. So they can contact the department. They can figure out what's going on with their license. But right here, right now, they're not going to make a tax exempt purchase in my store because this is telling me their license isn't valid. Now, if this license were valid, this verification status right here would turn green and it's going to say this number is a valid TPT license number. And it's going to have my time and date stamp again. Now, in my previous world, I was in retail. I was big box retail management. When somebody would give us this 5000A exemption certificate, we would search their license number. And we would actually print this. We would do a print screen right here, print this page, and we would attach it to that certificate. That way, if I get audited and the auditor asks to see these exemption certificates, they can see here's the completed form. I, as the business owner, did the due diligence. They made their purchase today at 10:02 at 10 a.m. on March 31st. I verified that their license was active. So they were able to make that tax exempt purchase. Okay, so that's the exemption certificates. And then the way you account for those tax exempt purchases on your TPT return is by using deduction codes. So a deduction code is a code that is used to deduct income that is exempt or excluded from tax as authorized by the Arizona Revised Statute and/or the Model City Tax Code. So some types of transactions are not subject to TPT and may be deducted from that tax base. To claim deductions on exempted transactions, the deduction must be listed on the Schedule A of the TPT form. So only deduction codes listed using the correct deduction codes will be allowed. Okay, so the deduction codes and the business codes need to match, and the deduction code has to be a valid code in order to be allowed. So each business classification has a specific list of deductions that are allowed. And by submitting your return on aztaxes.gov, only the allowable deductions for your business will be available for choosing. Paper filers must use the list that is found on ADOR.gov, and they must select the correct code. Incorrect codes for your business classification will be disallowed, resulting in a balance on your account. So again, the list can be found at AZDOR.gov. So I know that was a lot of information. Before we get into added tax and factor tax, I'm going to jump on over here back into our Q&A. I see we have quite a few questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start going back through these and see if I can answer a few more. Let's see. Please explain return and payment due dates. We will get to that in just a second. Okay, who is required to obtain a TPT license? So again, check the tax rate table, and that will list out the different business classifications that could be taxable. Can we choose to not be tax exempt? So I'm not sure I'm understanding that question. Can we choose to not be tax exempt? So certain businesses can be tax exempt if you're a 501c3, but that's not a blanket exemption. So it's going to depend on your business. Okay, we already answered that one. Which licenses are required for renewal? I believe we answered that one already. All TPT licenses must be renewed. We answered that one. I just logged on and noted a change. It took a bit and see annual. So this one is asking about the filing due date. So they changed from a quarterly filing frequency to an annual filing frequency, and they're wanting to know when the return is due. So we'll talk about return due dates in just a minute. So please help me understand the difference between state income tax and sales tax filing requirements. So again, this is transaction privilege tax is completely different than your income tax. Transaction privilege tax is a tax on the privilege of engaging in certain taxable activities within the state. So it's a tax on the gross income or gross proceeds derived from the business. Now, from there, you may make a profit, right? You may pay yourself from your business. You're going to include that on your individual income tax when you file those. But right now, we're just talking about the transaction privilege tax. So if a paper app is done, how long until I get a response? So it really just depends on paper, because it could increase your timeline by up to 14 business days, depending upon volume. And right now we are in tax season, so we're getting a lot of paper right now. So I would just recommend filing or applying online, but you'll know by paper that it was approved when you get your TPT license in the mail. And that TPT license will come to whatever mailing address is listed on the application. And guys, today the slides won't be available after today's presentation, but I did provide this like 19 to 20 page handout that talks about absolutely everything we covered today. So if you didn't quite understand something, more information will be available after the workshop today. Where the company has labor and material elements, are the TPT rates different? So you could be talking about MRRA and contracting requirements, and that gets a little convoluted and complicated. So we're not going to go into that in this presentation. What's the difference between prime versus use tax? I'm not sure what you mean by prime, but use tax is a tax on a purchaser that's purchasing something from out of state when the vendor that's out of state did not collect the tax. Ask Tax Policy at AZDOR.gov has been helpful for me in the past for specific tax questions for a particular business. Yes, absolutely, Sandra. So Ask Tax Policy will get you to our tax policy team, But I do want to put in a caveat there that if you're going to reach out to them, it is not on questions on which deduction code to use, how do I file, how do I complete a TPT return. If you're reaching out to Ask Tax Policy at azdor.gov, it is because you need assistance in interpreting statute. Okay, so that's the difference. If you need generic help on what deduction code do I use, what's my business code, what's the region code for Phoenix, you can email those types of questions to aztaxhelp@azdor.gov. Do we need to separate materials from labor to pay TPT on the materials only? Yes, absolutely. Keep your materials and your labor costs separate. Tax on rental properties is only applicable if the term of the period is less than 30 days, correct? So that's actually not correct, because there could be residential rental and then you have short-term vacation rentals. If you're talking about residential rentals, those are on stays that are 30 or more consecutive days, and not all cities tax residential rental. Okay, but if in that same property you also offer short-term or vacation rentals, those are taxable. So it's going to depend on where the property is located and what you're doing with that property. Our tax requirements for online sales where deliveries will be to other states, and there are tax requirements for that state. So there is a deduction code for interstate commerce. So check that out there. And that's something that's also very, very important, guys. If you are facilitating sales online to another state, if you meet certain thresholds, you could have a taxable obligation in another state wherever you're selling, and you would need to check with that state on their economic nexus thresholds. We just discussed short-term rentals and mentioned that this isn't a class on short-term rentals. Will there be a separate class to explain exactly how to set this up for short-term rentals, taking into account Airbnb, VRBO, who I believe pays the taxes for us? Yeah, so I'm not going to go into a lot on short-term rentals, but if you are using an online lodging marketplace, you still have to be licensed with the department, but the online lodging marketplace will remit the tax on your behalf. Now, from whatever they're giving you, you can download like a CSV file that tells you what you brought in, how much there was in tax. You then have to take that information to file your own tax return under your license, and you will use the appropriate deduction code to make everything 100% deductible, meaning your return is going to be zero, but there has to be a match off of what they paid and what you're filing. I own a residential rental estates holding company that I rent a single family home. If you have less than 4 rentals, do I need a TPT license for the business? It's going to depend where your properties are located. Would consulting a CPA or accountant help in figuring out this licensing and TPT information? Yep, so they could, depending upon who you go with. I know some accountants don't like to do taxes, some do. So just check around, see if you can find one that you like. Contractors who work in different cities and counties, is the tax calculated different location codes? So your contractors are going to file like your mobile vendors. So it's not going to be like location-based reporting. So the contractor will have a home office. It's usually going to be assigned like location 001. But if they go out and they do a job in Tempe, they're going to file with location 001, but their region code will say TE for Tempe. And then the next week they go out and they do a job out in Queen Creek. Their location code will still say 001 because it's reflecting their home base, but then their region code that they'll use will be the region code for Queen Creek. Okay, so they're going to report by jurisdiction. Are sales in the city included in the sales total for the county, or are they separate? So there are 2 separate tax rates that you're going to use to find your combined state and county rate, right? So if I charge something $100, it's $100 that I'm going to apply the county and state tax rate to and the city tax rate. That's why you're going to add the 2 rates together and charge your customer that's purchasing $100 worth of stuff the 8.6% or whatever the tax rate might be. If filing frequency is annual, this was recently approved. When is my return due? We'll talk about return and due dates, return and payment due dates in just a minute. Is there a list of non-taxable businesses? Not that's easily acceptable. If you are interested in reading statute, there is some information in the statute. If my filing frequency is annual, but I know I have sales of more than $8,000, do I still file annually or do I need to start filing monthly? So you want to go ahead and submit a business account update form. Let us know that you need to change that filing frequency. That way you're not hit with any unnecessary penalties, and then you can start filing appropriately. Does event parking for a venue require TPT? So that's a great question, and it's going to depend on who's doing the parking, right? Or not who's doing the parking, but who's managing the lot. Parking lot attendant, parking lot, like if you go to the fair and you see all the different vendors out there who are saying like $10 to park here, that's actually considered commercial lease. So it is a taxable activity. I was told I do not need a TPT under 100K. I do sales at markets. I just found out I do need one. Is there a fee for not having one? I printed out a JT form. Do I need all sections? So Nanette, if you have been operating for a period of time and you haven't filed your taxes, I would recommend contacting our voluntary disclosure team. They help businesses that have been operating outside of their requirements come into compliance, and they can help with penalties and that kind of thing. So if you've been operating for a period of time, you have several thousands of dollars in taxable sales that you haven't made, you may want to contact our VDA team. They may be able to assist you. Okay. Cottage baker, does that fall under caterer? So that's a good question. And I hate to say this, but there are different nuances when you're talking about a cottage baker, right? So that's someone who bakes out of their house and then they sell the goods. So you could be considered food for home consumption if somebody's going to come buy it and take it back home and eat it. But the minute that somebody places an order and you deliver that order to a business, it is no longer considered food for home consumption. So it really is going to depend on who you're making those sales to and how you're facilitating those sales. Follow-up question to the region question. If I have a brick and mortar location, say in Phoenix, but provide services to other areas, Glendale, Tullis, and Surprise, how does that get filed? Will a TPT need to be filed for each region and not just under Phoenix? So again, if you're like a contractor who does taxable activity in the different regions, but you have one brick and mortar location, yeah, you're going to report by jurisdiction. So each of those regions would be added to your license. The Form 5005 is still a valid contracting exemption certificate. Is there an exemption certificate for federal employees? Check the 5,000, see what those little boxes say in there. I can't remember right off the top of my head. With fillable forms, can they be saved in the preparer's computer? Sure, you can save the forms if you would like to. Just whenever you submit them, make sure you print them and provide a wet signature. How do we file for multiple DBAs TPT under one corporate banner? So each of the businesses, if they are not, what's the word? They don't do the same thing. So if their activities are different, you would want to license each one separately. If they do kind of the same thing, so like I have a restaurant business and I have 7 different restaurants all under my one EIN, I could just have each of those different restaurants be a different location. So I would have location 001, location 002, location 003, so on and so forth. So it's going to depend on how you want to license. They can be licensed separately or together as separate locations. If I purchase products from a vendor to make jewelry, I need to fill out this form for every vendor. Yeah, so if you want to make the purchases as tax exempt, you don't want to pay tax on those items because you're going to charge your customer tax, you would need to fill out the 5000A for every vendor that you're making tax exempt purchases from. Where can I find the procedure for exemption certificates? So that's going to be included in the handout that I believe the ACA will post on their website. but it is on our azdor.gov website. If you search exemption certificates, the procedure will come up. Where or how can I get a copy of my TPT license to be displayed in my business? So they would have mailed you a copy to the mailing address that was listed on the application. If you do need another copy, you can submit a business account update form and request to have it reprinted, but reprinting the license will result in a fee. Will the presentation be emailed? So we can't email the presentation just because some of the screenshots may have changed, but the ACA does have a handout that goes over absolutely everything that we have covered today. Do I have to have one for a plumbing company? So it depends, Ashley, what kind of plumbing company you are. If you do like ground up plumbing, or if you do what's called MRRA, maintenance, repair, replacement, alteration. There's going to be different nuances there if you act as a subcontractor or prime contractor. So I can't really tell you yes or no, you need a license, because I don't know the nuances of your business. According to my understanding of what I read on AZDOR's website, if I sell through a marketplace facilitator, I am not required to obtain TPT. Is that correct? I'm just in the beginning stages of starting my business. So great question. And another resource that I would like to give to all of you that are selling through those marketplace facilitators and may be selling into other states is that of our ECHO team, which is our e-commerce compliance and outreach. So while their main business or their main focus is on helping outside entities selling into Arizona, they also do help the Arizona-based businesses that sell into other states. So you can reach them. I'm going to put an email address in the chat here. If I could spell AZE sale at azdor.gov. You can email them with your questions and they may be able to assist you. I file online but didn't send in the form and was fined. Why do you have to do both? So you don't have to do both. If you're filing online, you do not want to mail in a paper form. If you're required to file online and you do mail in a paper form, you will be fined. So I'm guessing there's something else going on with your account there. If I purchase a product from a business and pay taxes, then install the product to a customer and charge the customer for the product, do I have to have a TPT? So again, I can't tell you yes or no because I don't know the nuances of your business. Okay, it could be that you're not taxable and you're buying and selling that item is just kind of an inconsequential nature of your business. But if you're acting as a contractor, you would be taxable. So I can't tell you yes or no. Is labor taxable for contractors who install materials? Again, contracting, it's very, very complicated. There are contracting guidelines available on azdor.gov. If you have not gone into those, I would definitely recommend looking at the contracting guidelines available on azdor.gov. I am a new startup small business. Congratulations. I just began my process of business entity formation with infrastructure build out and I'm opening. I may not have sales for 1 to 2 years. What advice can I be given on TPT? So the biggest piece of advice I can give you right now is if you apply for a TPT license now, we're going to expect you to file returns starting now. So if you're not going to have any taxable activities for a year down the line, apply when you're ready to start making those taxable activities because you don't want to miss filing a 0 return because you will be penalized. So when you're ready to start those taxable activities, apply right before you're ready to start that taxable activity. Since there are many nuances regarding TPT, do you recommend a CPA or TPT? Do you recommend a CPA or TPT consultant to help sort this out? So there are nuances to transaction privilege tax. As you get into it, it's kind of redundant. So the more you do it, the easier it becomes. If you're not comfortable, then you can get a CPA. I cannot recommend anyone, but just do your research. There's lots of them out there. And this, if they're familiar with taxes, they should know, they'll know some of this stuff, if not all of this stuff. according to your answer, I need to pay the city tax rate when doing work in the county outside the city. Do I need to add the two tax rates together for all sales? So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're doing work outside the city, so you're not in an incorporated area. If you're in one of those county islands, in one of the unincorporated areas within Arizona, it would just be county tax. The easiest way to find that out is to look up the exact location of where you're doing business on the aztaxes.gov tax rate lookup tool. Okay. If you sell frozen foods at a farmer's market, do you have to pay tax? So that one's going to be a little bit different because you could be considered food for home consumption. So Jackie, I can't tell you yes or no because I don't know your business model, but you could be considered food for home consumption, which is only taxable in certain cities and towns. How do you determine when to report taxes under the different municipality? We have a retail storefront, but also do installations. The advice we were given years ago was to report sales under the city where our business is. And for larger installations, those were to be reported under MRRA. So how would you report them under MRRA if you don't report them off of your jurisdiction? So Allison, I'm a little confused on that question there. I'm going to give you guys another email address here. And for some generic questions, you can go ahead and email us at the education unit at azdor.gov. We don't pretend to know all the answers, but we know a lot of folks that know answers, and we can assist you that way as well. Okay. I have already acquired a TPT license. I do not make the $2,000 taxable income. Do I need to file anyway? So yes, if you have a transaction privilege tax license, you want to make sure you're filing appropriately, because if you miss a return, you could be penalized for a late filing, okay? All right, so let's jump on back in here to the presentation. We've got about 30 minutes left. There is some more stuff that I want to cover with you guys, but fantastic questions, guys, absolutely awesome questions. Keep them coming. We'll address as many as we can, but let's for right now get on back into the presentation here. So we're going to talk very briefly about added tax versus factored tax. And a vendor may pass on the economic burden of the transaction privilege tax as a separate and distinct item of charge. An example of a common added tax situation is like at a retail store, when you go and you buy something and you see your subtotal. Underneath your subtotal, you see a line that says tax, and they charge you a tax, and then they give you your grand total. That's what we mean when we say added tax. So the tax was added to your invoice. Okay. A person who does not state an added tax, an added charge to cover the TPT tax may factor out the tax. So factoring is a mathematical process that calculates the tax from the seller's receipts when an amount was not separately stated. An example of a common factoring situation is like at a vendor at a sporting event, right? So say you go to a ball game and there's those folks who are walking up and down the aisle selling popcorn, peanuts, sodas, whatever the case may be. When you purchase something from one of those vendors, they're telling you that it's $10 for the soda. Okay, they're not going to tell you that it's $9.50 and 50 cents tax or whatever the case may be. They're going to tell you that it's a flat $10. At the end of the event, what they're going to do is they're going to take all of the money they received and they're going to factor out the tax from their gross receipts. Now, there are tax factoring tables available on azdor.gov. Like I said, it's kind of a mathematical process here. But when you go to azdor.gov and you type in tax factoring, there are two separate tables that come up. One is for contractors and one is for retail and other non-prime contractors. So if we click on that one and say we use our example of Maricopa County retail, right? So here's our 8.6% tax. All right, we're gonna do some math here. Let me get up my calculator and I'll show you guys how this works. So say as that vendor, I made $100. Okay, I sold sodas. I only sold 10 sodas at 10 bucks. I made $100 that night. Well, that $100 includes tax from the people who bought my sodas, right? So now I need to know how much of that $100 was soda or was taxed. So what I'm gonna do is here's my 8.6%. I'm gonna multiply it by this really long number. And that's gonna tell me how much tax is included in this $100. So 100 times 0.079189969. $7.92 was included. So of my $100, $7.92 of it was tax. And that's going to be an easier way to factor out that tax, to figure out how much tax was included in your gross receipts when you didn't separately state it on the invoices, okay? If you're interested in determining how they came up with these tax factors, if you scroll on down to the bottom of the table, it does tell you how they come about with those little 8-digit decimal numbers. So they take the percentage, they turn it into a decimal, they divide the decimal by 1 and that decimal to get the 8-digit number. I don't need to know all that, I just need to know my tax factors. So you would find your tax rate, combine state, county, and city, and then right next to it is going to be your 8-digit tax factor, okay? So that's tax factoring. Let's see, what else have we got here? So now we're going to put it all together. Okay, we're going to take all the concepts that we've talked about and we're going to try to stick it all together here and make it make sense. So some best reporting practices. A business that holds more than one license must maintain separate books and records for each licensed business, okay? So say as a business owner, I own 3 different businesses. I have licensed each business separately. So business A has 1 license number, business B has a 2nd license number, business C has a different license number. I must maintain separate books and records for every single licensed business. Now, within my business, if I am engaged in different taxable activities, I must maintain separate books and records for each of those taxable activities. So let me give you an example. My favorite example to give is that old-timey restaurant, you know, where you'll walk in and it's this old-timey store up front where you can buy old-fashioned sodas, old-fashioned candies, kind of Western clothes, tchotchkes, that kind of thing. You proceed on back and then you can be seated by a hostess for the restaurant side of the business. Well, they're engaged in retail in the front of their business and restaurant and bar in the back of the business. That is 2 separate business codes that they are doing at one location. They've licensed them as one, right? So they must maintain separate books and records for their retail business and their restaurant and bar business. So they got to keep those separate. If they don't, and they were to get audited, the auditor is going to lump everything together and they're going to charge them the highest tax rate. So make sure if you're engaged in separate taxable business activities that you are maintaining separate books and records for each of those activities. Okay. So we got a lot of questions on this. This is talking about the return and payment due dates. So return and payments are due the 20th of the month following the reporting period. They are delinquent if not received on or before the last business day of that month. Okay, so now earlier we talked about the 3 different filing frequencies, right? We talked about annual, quarterly, and monthly. So if I'm an annual filer, I'm going to keep record of all of my transactions from January to December. And the following January 20th, I'm going to file my return. So from January of 2022 to December of 2022, I'm going to keep all of that together, figure out all my taxes. And then January 20th of 2023, I'm going to file my return. And then it's delinquent if not received by the last business day of the month. Now, if I'm quarterly, there's a little more work to do, right? You got to file a couple more returns. So I'm going to file the 20th of the month following the quarter. So I would keep January, February, March together. And on April 20th, I'm going to file my Q1 taxes. Okay. And then April, May, June, July 20, I'm going to file my Q2 taxes. Okay. So they're always due the 20th of the month following the reporting period. And then they're delinquent if not received on or before the last business day of the month. So then if you're monthly, Right now we are finishing up March. So March taxes are due on April 20th. April taxes would be due on May 20th. May taxes would be due on June 20th. So it's always the 20th of the month following the reporting period. And they're delinquent if not received on or before the last business day of the month. Okay, so you've got a little bit of a grace period there. They're really due the 20th, but they're not delinquent unless we don't receive them before the last business day of the month. Okay, this is something else that I've also talked about. Returns must be made even when no sales have taken place, when no taxable activities have taken place. So if I have a business and say for the month of January, I didn't have any sales, but I'm a monthly filer, come February 20th, I would have had to file a 0 return. So February comes along, I still don't have any sales and I'm a monthly filer. March 20th, I've got to file a 0 return. Okay. March rolls along, I still don't have any sales. April 20th, I've got to file that 0 return. So even when there's no taxable activity, you still have to file your return based on your filing frequency. So if I'm a quarterly filer, Q1, I have no sales. I got to file that 0 return by April or on April 20th, stating that I've had no taxable sales in Q1. Okay, so 20th of the month following the reporting period, you still have to file a return even if there are no taxable sales. When making payments online at aztaxes.gov, your payment is not posted until the following business day. So therefore, to be considered timely when you're making those payments online, you need to make that payment the second to last business day of the month. Okay, and it's going to ask you for a settlement date. So the second to last business day of the month. Today is the last business day of the month. Okay, so I would have needed to submit that payment not yesterday, but the day before in order to have it post to my account appropriately. Okay. And just like always, a business day is any day except Saturday, Sunday, or any legal Arizona state holiday. So I did see in the chat, there was a question about the accounting credit. So here is that information. An accounting credit is just that. It is a credit that we give to timely filers. Timely electronic filers receive an accounting credit of 1.2% up to $12,000 per year. And timely paper filers receive an accounting credit of 1% up to $10,000 per year. So not all business activity codes are entitled to claim the credit, and accounting credits can only be claimed at the state level. So it's not a city credit, it is a state credit, okay? On our website, there are some accounting credit specifics if you would like to take a look at those. If you just search accounting credit in the little search bar at the top, this information will come up. But it is very important to note that it is up to the business owner to decide how and when to claim that credit. The Department of Revenue is not going to automatically add it to your returns. It's the owner's responsibility to add it to the TPT form, okay? Now, smaller businesses, they may claim this credit monthly and they may never reach that maximum threshold. But if you're a very large business with very large returns, you can claim that credit and you may reach that threshold much, much sooner. All right, so it's a credit that we give to timely filers. So if you miss a month and you are late on that return, you cannot claim that credit the rest of the year because you've missed a return. So it's only for those timely filers. And if you want a bit more of a credit, make sure you're filing on time online, then you'll receive that 1.2% versus just the 1%. Okay, so here are some forms for those taxpayers who are unable to comply with the electronic filing and or payment requirements. They may submit a request to the department to continue to file and pay by paper. And that is this annual waiver form 292. The approval may be granted for taxpayers with no computer or internet access or for any other circumstance the director deems acceptable. Now, this is an annual waiver. So if you are submitting it saying that for some reason you cannot comply with the mandate to file and pay online, you're requesting to file and pay by paper, say it is granted, This waiver will expire at the end of this year. So before next year, you would need to submit another waiver to be approved for 2023. So these waivers are only valid for 1 year. So if you're gonna submit a waiver, make sure you keep that in mind, valid for 1 year. Now, these are the two most common TPT forms. There is the TPT-EZ and the TPT-2. So the TPT-EZ is used by businesses with only one physical location, and the business must report in 6 or less state, county, or city jurisdictions and utilize 5 or less state, county, or city deduction codes. And there are separate sections for reporting the combined state and county and the city transaction details. And there are separate Schedule A sections for itemizing in the combined state and county and the city deductions. So real quick, let me show you what that looks like here. Again, if you're on our website, azdor.gov, come on over to the menu under Forms. You want to click on TPT Forms. And then you're going to scroll on down to page 2. And here is your TPT-EZ. So if you click on it, again, it's going to take you to a landing page. The landing page is going to give you some information, some important information regarding the return. You can download the instructions if you would like, or you can just download the form itself. Again, it will populate in a fillable PDF. And if you are filing by paper, this is how you want to fill this out. Okay, so your taxpayer information is going to go on the left. That is your business name, your mailing address, city, state, zip, phone number. Off to the right is your identifying information. So if you're a sole prop, this could be your social security number, or if you have an EIN, it's going to be your EIN. Underneath, you're going to list your 8-digit license number. And then underneath here, you're going to list your period, your filing period. So your filing period is always going to be the first day of the month, okay? And your period ending is always going to be the last day of that period. So if you're filing annually, your period is going to be January 1st of 2022. Your period ending is December 31st of 2022. Okay, if you're a monthly filer and you're filing for March, it's going to be March 1st of 2022, and your period ending is March 31st of 2022. If you're a quarterly filer, January 1st of 2022, period ending March 31st of 2022. There is no mid-month here. So your period is always the first day of the period and the last day of the period, okay? So now this middle section here is kind of like your summary section. So I always tell folks when they are submitting their returns, skip this section for now. What you really want is on page 2. Page 2 is the meat and potatoes of your return. So if we start at the top, you're going to see this is the state and county transaction details. Okay, so this is where you're going to put your state and county information. So section A is grayed out, so you're not required to input anything in section A. Section B is your region code. So that is that 3-digit region code that corresponds to the county in which you're doing business. So again, if we stick to that retail business in Phoenix, I know that my region is Maricopa County. So I would input M-A-R, Maricopa. Okay, the name of the region is Maricopa. So I would type it here. Now, what is my business code? What is the taxable activity that I am partaking in? I'm a retail business. So I've looked at the tax rate table. I see that retail has a business code of 017. So I'm going to enter 017 in column D. Column E is going to ask me to spell out my description of my business. So it's going to be retail. And column F is asking for my gross receipts. Now, transaction privilege tax is a gross receipts tax. That means everything that I collect from my customer, including tax. Okay. So if we think back to that soda vendor who sold $100 worth of sodas, that included tax, right? So I would put my $100 of gross receipts right here. Now, that includes tax, but I don't want to pay tax on the tax that I collected. So we're going to deduct it out. So by using the tax factoring, remember we collected $7.92 worth of tax. So I'm going to put that in my deductions. Okay, so now this form is doing the math for me. So gross minus deductions equals my net taxable. But what it won't do is pre-populate my tax rate. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're inputting our tax rate correctly if you are going to file a paper form. Now, if we remember, the county, the state and county tax rate for a retail business in Maricopa County was 6.3%. So if we change that into a decimal, our tax rate is 0.063. All right, and if we tab over, it's going to tell me my total tax due. So gross minus deductions equals my net taxable times my tax rate equals my total tax due. For the state and county of Maricopa, I owe $5.80 for this month, for this filing period. If I were going to claim an accounting credit, I was filing by paper on time, this is where I would input my accounting credit information. Now, very quickly, let me show you. If we go here, we're going to search tax rate table. See, if I could spell, it would be fantastic. So tax rate table, the first thing that comes up is my tax rate table. Now, this says for April of 2022, but I'm filing for March. Okay, so I'm going to click the archive and click March of 2022. It's going to bring up my tax rate table. Any changes are going to be highlighted in yellow, but what I'm looking for is the accounting credit. I want to know what kind of credit I can get for filing and paying on time. So I'm going to come down to the retail line right here. I'm going to go all the way over to the far right. And it says accounting credit rate for paper filers, state tax only. Accounting credit rate for electronic filers, state tax only. So here's my retail line. I'm a paper filer. I can see that my credit is 0.056%. So I'm going to go back into my return, and that is 0.056%. So I have to change that into another decimal. So 0.0056 is the credit that I can claim on this return. So that's allowing me to take a credit of 52 cents on this return. That's why we're saying that small businesses can claim this credit monthly and never reach that threshold, whereas large businesses can claim this credit monthly and reach that threshold much, much sooner. Okay. So now we've got everything completed for our county line. Now we need to do the exact same thing for our city line. So here are our city transaction details. Oops. City transaction details right here. So this was for the county. This down here is for the city. The first thing that we see is different is that the location code is not grayed out. Remember, at the city and town level, we use location codes to identify the physical location where the transactions are taking place. So my business is super easy. I only have one location. So my location is going to be 001. I'm going to come over to my city code. Again, we know my business is in Phoenix. So I'm going to put my 2-digit region code. That region code or that city code is found on the tax rate table. So if we go back to the tax rate table and I use my Control F and I'm going to type in Phoenix, it's going to take me to my Phoenix tax rate table. So these are all of the taxable activities in Phoenix, along with their business codes and their tax rates. And I can see that my region and city code for Phoenix is PX. The county that it's in is MAR, that's Maricopa. So my region code for Phoenix is PX. And if I come down here, I can see my tax rate for retail is 2.3%. So I'm going to come on back to my return. PX is my city code. The name of my city is Phoenix. My business code, just like above, is 017 for retail. My description is retail. My gross receipts was still $100. My deductions is that tax. I factored out the tax from my gross receipts was still $7.92. So gross minus deductions equals my net taxable. Now I got to put in my city tax rate. So up here, it was 6.3%. For the city of Phoenix, it's 2.3%. So I'm going to input my tax rate, and it's going to tell me my total tax due for city. So gross minus deductions equals net taxable. Net taxable times my tax rate equals my total tax due. Now there are no accounting credits for the city, so I'm going to leave this blank. And it is telling me that my city tax due is $2.12. So up here, I owe $5.29 for the county and state, and I owe $2.12 for the city. But now I have added deductions here. So I have to list my deduction codes. Otherwise, my deductions are going to be disallowed. So I'm going to come on down and I'm going to look right here. This is my state and county deductions, and these are my city deductions. So I need to include all of the information. So what is my region code for my state and county? Well, it was MAR for Maricopa. What is my business code? 017. And what is my deduction code? So the deduction codes can be found online at azdor.gov. I can search for them. There it is, deduction codes. And it's telling me these are deduction codes for filing periods of current, for filing periods before October 1st. So we want the current ones. And this is the list of the deduction codes. Now, this is why we advise to file online versus filing by paper. If you get the code wrong, your deduction is going to be disallowed, and it could result in a balance due on your account. If you file online, only the deduction codes for your business classification will be listed. Okay, so that's why we recommend filing online. So we know that we factored the tax. We've already collected that tax from our customer. So if I want, I can look through the list. I mean, it's 24 pages long. That's a lot of pages to look through. Or I can Control F and say that I am looking for tax that was collected. So tax collected, look right here, 551, tax collected or factored included in gross receipts. And the way that you use this is on the left-hand side, this is your deduction code information. So there's your 3-digit code and there's a description. Now over here on the right, these are the business codes that can claim that deduction. So remember, we're under business code 017 at the state level. There is deduction, or there's business code 17. So I'm able to claim this deduction at the state level. If we come over to city business codes, I see 17 listed under the city. So 551 is acceptable at the city level for a retail business. So I'm going to use 551 to deduct the tax that I collected from my customers. Okay, so my deduction code is 551. Now, what is the total amount of the deduction that I'm taking? $7.92. $7.92. And what is the description of the deduction? Is tax collected. Okay, now that's got me covered for the state and county line. So this section corresponds to the county up here. I still have to fill out this section for the city. Okay, so we're going to do exactly the same thing. Location code, well, we know that's 001. We already input it, 001. What is my city code? I'm doing business in Phoenix, so that's going to be PX. What is my business code? We all know retail 017. We've looked at it several times. What's my deduction code? We just looked at the deduction code table. We know that that deduction code is 551. What is the total amount of deduction that I am claiming? $7.92. And what is the description of that deduction? Tax collected. Okay. So now the whole backside of my return is filled out. We're great, right? We've already filled out all of our business information. Well, there was that chunk of information in the middle that we skipped over, right? If you're filling out this form, you downloaded the form from our website, you just click this calculate button and you go on back to page 1 and it's going to bring over all of that information for you. Okay. So net Arizona county tax was $5.29. Okay. So my subtotal, if I had any excess tax, I could include it here. So excess is what you collected above and beyond what was deemed due. Most of the time you don't collect excess tax, so we're going to leave that as 0. So here's my subtotal line of AA plus A1 plus A2 equals A3, $5.29. And what was the net city tax? And it's telling me page 2, line 14, column M. We know that was $2.12. Okay, if I had city excess tax, I would list that here, but we know we don't, that's 0. So my subtotal of BB plus B1 equals B2, which is $2.12. And now it's going to add those two figures together. Okay, so A3 plus A2 equals line CC, which is $7.40. So for this reporting period, for March, for my business of selling sodas at a ball game, I owe $7.40 in tax. Okay, so I'm going to file my return and then I'm going to make my payment. Filing your return to be in compliance, it is 2 steps. You must file the return and make the payment to be considered in compliance. Now that's the easiest way to file. If you're doing it by paper, there also exists the TPT2. And the reason we didn't go over the TP2 in great detail is because the TPT2 is required to be filed online. So it is for those businesses that have more than one physical location or report under 7 or more business codes or 6 or more jurisdictions. And it must be filed online at aztaxes.gov. Okay, so that's why we didn't go over that one. It's the same kind of form. It's just much, much longer. So instead of having little sections on one page that talk about the state and the county and the deduction codes, there are separate pages that talk about that stuff. So there's a page for the state and county, there's a page for the city, there's a page for the state deductions, there's a page for the city deductions. And if you miss one of those pages when you submit that return by paper, it's going to cause your return to not post appropriately and could result in a balance due on your account. So if you're required to file a TPT2, you must file it online. Okay. So I know we're getting ready to wrap up here. I want to allow just a bit more time for questions, but we're going to run very, very quickly through a knowledge check. I did send these questions ahead of time, but let's just go ahead for ease. Use the chat feature, and we're just going to answer true or false. Okay. So utilizing the chat. So statement 1, registering to file and pay taxes online is a 3-step process. Do you think that's true or false? Yes, true. Great job. Carol, Tanya, yeah, absolutely. That is true. Great job, guys. Statement 2, all deduction codes are applicable to all business classifications. Do you think that one is true or false? No, Carol's on it this morning. False. Great job, guys. That is false. Great job. Statement 3, businesses with more than one physical location are required by law to use aztaxes.gov. Do you think that is true or false? True. Awesome. Yes. Fantastic. Oh, you guys are making me so proud. Good job. Good job. Statement 4, businesses with more than $500 in TPT liability must file electronically. True or false? Well, Tina is in there. Tanya, Jennifer, Patty, awesome. Great job, guys. All right, last one. Region and city codes are used to report revenue, to report and disperse revenue to the city in which it was collected. Is that true or false? True. Great job, guys. Awesome. I know that was a lot of information and you guys hung through it all the way to the end. Great job there. So as we go through, if you have any other questions, go ahead and put those in the Q&A here. I did just add some resources up onto the screen, and I'll go over those very quickly with you. The first one is we do have two websites. Remember, aztaxes.gov is the website you're going to use when you need to do an activity. You need to file a return. You need to make a payment, verify a TPT license. You're going to do that on aztaxes.gov. Okay. AZDOR.gov is going to be our more informational website. That's where you're going to find the forms to download. That's where you're going to find information on starting a new business that you want to use in conjunction with the ACA Small Business Checklist. That's a fantastic resource. Okay, the two of them together is amazing. Okay, there are also publications that you can read. If you want more information on business taxes in Arizona, you can read the publication. That's where you find the tax rate tables, where you find the deduction code list. That's on the more informational website. On the TPT quick reference guide, that's where you're going to find quick resources on how to file and pay online using aztaxes.gov. The Model City Tax Code is where you're going to find specific information to your city or town, your city or town profiles, what they choose to tax. If you are selling online, the Echo Teams information is right there in the middle of your screen, e-commerce compliance and outreach. Well, they do mainly help, those out-of-state businesses selling into Arizona. They do also help Arizona-based businesses selling externally. And then if you're interested in any other tutorials or any other workshops that we may have, you can visit the azdor.gov taxpayer education page. And it's kind of a one-stop shop for all of those tutorials. Okay. And with that, that took us right up to 11 o'clock here. So I'd like to say just, Robert, thank you so much, ACA, for having me today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you.
You got some great folks in the audience there that hang with you all the way to the end. I love it.
Yeah, we had some great questions and great participation. Thank you, everybody, for attending and being part of this. And thank you, Megan, for the workshop and sharing all that information. And again, this is being recorded, so we'll post it later today, and we'll share that workbook that Megan had mentioned multiple times with that recording, so you can access it through that link there. So with that, we are right at time, and we'll go ahead and wrap up and let everybody get back to their day. But we again appreciate everybody for being with us, and we hope to see you next Tuesday on our boot camp, our regular boot camp webinar session. Until then, thanks, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you.